Good morning, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Thomas Christopher, and I'm joined today by Service Associate Pete Wernick, Tad and Emily Koriath, providing music, and our tech ushers, Mary Stackpole and Deborah Minch, who help things run very smoothly. And the most important people to mention are all of you, this fellowship, and all of the wonderful people you are, for you are the reason we do any of it. As I say the welcome words today, I invite you to shift into gallery mode if you haven't already done so, and scroll through the screen so you can experience the lovely diversity that is this congregation. Because without it and without you, there would be no us. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, skin tones, shapes and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. Christian, paganist, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian, Universalist, Unitarian Universalist, with all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long it has been that you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today.
As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We acknowledge that our community is located on the lands once stewarded by the Arapaho, Ute, Lakota, and Cheyenne people. Our congregation honors Indigenous legacy and respects the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands through our connections to Right Relationship Boulder. We also acknowledge we live in a time when Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, BIPOC, and Latino and Hispanic people are devalued, violated, and even killed because of systemic racism. We commit ourselves to becoming anti-racist in ourselves and our institutions by taking actions to dismantle racism in society, taking guidance from and honoring the lived experience of those identifying as BIPOC, and developing personal relationships between cultures. We'll give our announcements at the end of the service today. Please stay with us to learn what's going on in today's post-service breakout rooms and in the days to come, and how you can be involved. Also, our joys and concerns today will be posted in the chat instead of by raising our hands to speak. We hope this will help our service run more smoothly. TC will let you know when to start sharing those in the chat, and I will read out loud what you write. If you're new here, we're glad you found us and hope that in this virtual community, you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. Each Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us. To get better connected, please see the chat window for links on how to stay in touch with us. Finally, if this is one of your first times with us, we invite you to say hello in the chat. We love to know who is among us. So please do stay for announcements at the end, and if you like, join virtual coffee hour after the service.
If you have a chalice at home, you can light it with me, as I light our fellowship chalice, so we know where our chalices are. Please write in the chat, chalice lit in, well, the name of your town. Please say the words along with me as I light our chalice. I'll go slowly so you can follow along. We light our chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I will sing our bowl again, inviting it to draw you deeper into the present moment and this, our beloved community.
Hey, TC, I think your original sound is off. Could you try that again with original sound, please?
Oh, you're right. Original sound was off. Not only that, I hit it better. For our opening words, a poem called Life Story. People insist that you have a life story, a story explaining how you became you, a version you use when you're seeking employment, another you use when you're out on a date. People desire that your story have meaning. People require that your story make sense. People aren't pleased if your story is boring. People demand that your story not change. Make sure your hero with gumption and courage, facing adversity, wins in the end. I made up my story to satisfy people, and now they've the gall to inquire if it's true. The most I will say is, it's truly a story inspired by actual events.
In her nonfiction book, The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson spans most of the 20th century, tracing the lives of 3 African Americans starting in Jim Crow rural South, each a part of the Great Migration to points north and west. Toward the end of the book, Ida Mae Gladney, now 85, makes a rare trip from Chicago back to where she's from, in Mississippi. We pick up Wilkerson's narrative from 1998. We pull up to a frame house with a pickup truck and farm implements in the yard. It's where David McIntosh lives. He was the suitor who rode on horseback to court Ida Mae when she was a young girl, and who lost out to the man who married Ida Mae and carried her off to Chicago. Had things turned out differently, had she not married George, this might be where Ida Mae would be living today, on a Chickasaw County farm with chickens and pole beans, in walking distance from where she grew up. She would never have lived in Chicago, might never have seen it. She wouldn't have been able to vote all those years or worked in a big city hospital. to ride the elevated train and taste Polish sausage and be surrounded by family and friends most everywhere she went because most everyone she knew moved north like she did. Her children, James, Eleanor, Velma, not to mention the grandchildren, might not have existed or would surely have been different from what they were if they had. It's almost incomprehensible now. David comes out of the house in his baseball hat. He had not seen her in half a lifetime. He recognizes her instantly. He breaks into a smile. "How are you, Ida May?" "I'm blessed," she says, smiling back. He is a compact man in soiled denim and bifocals, not much taller than Ida May. He stayed in Mississippi and lived his life close to the land, the opposite of how Ida May ended up. He studies her face across the decades and reaches out and grabs her hand. Just then David's wife, in white braids, comes out to see who is visiting, and Ida May and David keep it to a warm hug and a few words. Ida May climbs into the car, still looking back at David, and he is still looking at her. "Bless his heart," Ida May says as the car backs out of his dirt yard. "I knew him the minute I saw him." That turned out to be the last time they would see each other. He died the next year, and she would not mourn so much as contemplate the meaning of what might have been and what their lives had turned out to be.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
TC, you're on mute.
Whoops. The theme for this month is We Are a People of Story. Well, that narrows it down. Finding something to say for this topic reminds me of the man who ran from his house, jumped on his horse, and rode off in all directions. For a number of years, I've been thinking about the connection between our identities and stories. First time I recall thinking about it was in 1995 at the Unitarian Church of Evanston, Illinois, when Barbara Peskin and Ann Tyndall were candidating to become co-ministers. In the forum at the end of the week for members to ask questions, one person asked whether as lesbians they felt they would have any trouble counseling straight people. Answer, no problem. Barbara told me after the forum that she was offended by the question. I was intrigued by it. You might as well ask, could a man counsel a woman? Just how much experience must you have how much experience must you share in common to understand somebody else? I decided that the only way you understand anyone is by knowing their story. And that is also the only way you understand yourself. Some people act as if they really are their stories. They so carefully curate their stories on Facebook that you'd hardly know that they're living lives of quiet desperation. Nobody thinks about the meaning of life, except during an identity crisis. I've been thinking about it for the past 60 years. I've been thinking that your life story is what gives meaning to your life. A story has a meaning, and you have a life story, so your life must have a meaning. Or maybe a bunch of them. Life is like a collection of short stories we are trying to work into a novel. Life is a manuscript in search of a good editor. A life story is a lot like a resume. It tells us and everybody else what to expect from us. When you change during a life transition, you have to update your resume, to revise your life story to match your new reality, including some incidents, ignoring others, reinterpreting some episodes, and rewriting some others. During this revision, life is meaningless, our old story having been lost, and our new story not yet having been found. And we can get depressed. I suspect that a significant fraction of depression comes from rejecting a life transition. There are things we value that make life worthwhile, without which life would not be worth living. A life transition may be experienced as a loss of those things. That life is over can feel like life is over. All this leaves me wondering, who are we really? Our conscious selves? The subject of our story? The inner reality we have to fit the story to, or just our bodies, or something else? And what's this immortal soul we're supposed to have? Maybe our souls are our stories. And as long as our stories are told, we continue to exist. At least I notice a lot of people acting like that. Most everybody I talk to has something they wish to leave behind to be remembered by. A classic case is Herostratus, a 4th century BCE Greek. He burned down the temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the world, so that his name would be remembered forever. They immediately passed a law making it illegal on pain of death to mention his name or write it again. But so far, We've remembered it for 2,300 years. You know, strangely, sometimes a person's life, their life story, isn't about them. I was in a group where we were going around the circle, taking turns telling who we were. One woman, during her turn, only told us about her children and grandchildren. I thought, what about you? And then I realized she was telling us who she was, what her life was about. She did not impress me as living a life of quiet desperation. And there are times when the most important story in your life is not obviously connected to your life at all. Sometimes it's an inspirational story that fills you with longing for how life could be, or a cautionary tale with some insight into how your life could end up. Oh, so what did I find in my ride off in all directions? Your identity, I've decided, and the meaning of your life are based on stories which, although inspired by actual events, are nonetheless stories that can and do change over time. If your life feels stuck, check your stories. They may be stuck, not fitting who you are or who you are becoming. They may have pulled you through hard times before, but now they're holding you back.
Thank you, TC. We all have our stories to think about, and we're doing something a little different this week. We'd like to set aside 2 minutes now for you to think. Just think about the stories that guide you and that say who you are. that gave you a good opportunity to think through your life and what's guided it and who you are. We're going to ask you in a little bit to summarize in just a few words your life story. But now, moving along, each week we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today we share our plate with Together Colorado, a multi-faith statewide organization committed to bringing the faith value of human dignity to the public square. Together Colorado has been our partner in justice work for over a decade now, connecting us with those most impacted by the injustices in our state, teaching us skills in community organizing, and linking our faith to powerful interfaith action. In the areas of immigration, enhancing access to mental health services, preserving affordable housing, economic and racial justice, Together Colorado has been central in our effective work for justice. Today's offering will support our annual dues to this mighty statewide organization. Once you've made your contribution, we invite you to write in the chat up to 8 words telling your story.
for the work of this fellowship, bringing love, reason, compassion, and justice to the world, and to the work of Together Colorado, we dedicate our offerings.
And just to continue a little longer in this time of giving, I've got some pledge information to share. While the Stewardship Committee is done for the time being and the pledge drive is ended, it is far from over. The goal this year is to raise $489,740 via pledges. And across congregations, it is unfortunately not unusual to reach a pledge campaign goal, and it happened at the ship this year, with pledges coming in at $440,530, which leaves a deficit of $49,210. And with that, we had a total of 179 pledging units for this upcoming fiscal year, compared to the 204 for the fiscal year we are just wrapping up now. And the good news, because there is good news, BVUUF received a PPP loan of $57,233, which has been forgiven and does not need to be repaid. And there is still some of that money left over. So it gets us a little closer to the goal, but not quite. And hopefully I am done trying to muddle through saying numbers right now. More good news. You shipmates have bold, audacious dreams and values. You do so much, both inside and outside of the fellowship. I'm not even going to give an attempt to mention it all right now. I put it in the I put just a little bit in the Connections Weekly, but it's a lot. COVID-19 may have put a hitch in your giddy up, but it doesn't seem to be slowing most of you down. You are a bunch of fired up folks. And I imagine if we were in person during this pledge drive, there would have been some large poster board with a flaming chalice that would be getting colored in as the pledges were submitted, giving you a visual of how much farther you had to go next year. So this is my request. If this last 12 plus months have left you struggling, either emotionally, financially, whatever, please reach out to me. Don't worry about your pledge this year. Just let me know so I can make a note of it. Let me know if you need any other resources. Please do not suffer alone. This is also part of the beloved community created here. If any of you have not gotten around to submitting your pledges yet, would you please do so? It doesn't have to be much, and every little bit helps us to attain the goals that you've created at the ship. And to those who have already pledged, thank you. And if you happen to come across a few extra dollars, consider adding that to your pledge. Finally, I've heard rumors that some members are waiting to pledge until we can gather together under the fellowship roof. I find that hard to believe. But if it is the case, please reconsider. Part of creating this beloved community is being present for others and creating something better and bigger than ourselves, even when we might not be feeling it for ourselves in the moment. It's both the getting and the giving, the being loved and the loving that creates this phenomenal fellowship. You BVUUFers are an inspiring group of people. I am grateful to be your intern minister, and humbled by the grace, compassion, and generosity that you show me, your fellow shipmates, and the interconnected web of which we are all a part. On the horizon, I see an end to this isolation, the separation from the spiritual community that I serve and have grown to love. no matter how this pandemic has affected you, I imagine we can all agree it has been a very peculiar time. Now we get to lean in and create a new and hopefully much better version of normal. Thank you.
And now we sing. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you for your contributions. Sometimes it takes a story to instill a message. Whether in a fable or a novel, many of our deepest norms and beliefs are represented by the plot or the moral or the takeaway from a vivid story told and retold. So has been the case with the 1954 novel Lord of the Flies by William Golding. It's the tale of 30 British prep school boys marooned on an uninhabited island. They divide into competing tribes, and the behavior of the majority degenerates into savagery. This novel has made a deep impression in our culture, selling 25 million copies in English alone, and has been made into 3 movies over the years so far. The lesson echoes the outlook of philosophers, from Hobbes back to the writers of the Christian Bible, where the concept of original sin sets the tone for human beings as a species and makes each one of us guilty as of our birth and likely to do sinful and antisocial things. Such an outlook can be seen as a downer, especially given the notion of the self-fulfilling prophecy, where just predicting something helps it to come true. This is a story, Lord of the Flies, that can be said to be holding us back. However, unfortunately, there is another known human tendency, the tendency toward cooperation. And we have recently learned of a comparable story from decades ago on the other side of the world, 11 years after The Lord of the Flies appeared, and whose takeaway is much more optimistic. This is a true story that is only coming to light in our culture as of this last year. It was featured in an episode of 60 Minutes last month, which is how I found out about it. To see it online, see the link in the chat. I promise you'll find it interesting and uplifting. Here in brief is the story fully documented. This is 1965. 6 teenage boys, the oldest 17, from the South Pacific island of Tonga, decided to steal a boat. But they encountered a severe storm that damaged the boat, and with no way to communicate, no food or water, they drifted for 8 days and finally washed up on a deserted volcanic island, their boat destroyed on the rocks. After expressing their fervent gratitude for their lives, the boys go about nourishing themselves on birds' eggs and raw fish, and eventually climb the harsh rocks to start exploring the island. In time, they find sources of water, create shelters, and even a garden. A breakthrough occurs after much frustration rubbing pieces of wood together. They finally create fire. They divide important chores like tending the fire and a constant lookout for any passing boat. As the months wear on, the fire burned on, warming them, cooking food, and used for shaping wood. They built things like a bench press and a guitar-like instrument using wire from their wrecked boat. They sang together, prayed together, and had ways to object to each other's behavior and stop fights while still keeping their connection. They went through periods of deep sadness when they assumed they would never be discovered. They built a raft, but it was destroyed on the rocks. After 15 months, Australian lobster fisherman Peter Warner was sailing near the island when he spotted a burned out patch and then a human figure. In minutes, all 6 boys were swimming toward him. You can imagine the feelings of all 7 of these amazed people. What happens then is interesting in itself. On return to their home island over a year after their funerals had been held, they stunned everyone to great joy and were also arrested and charged with the theft of the boat until Peter Warner paid for the boat. Cut to 56 years later. 2 of the 6 boys, now in their 70s, are interviewed by 60 Minutes, along with Peter Warner. It happens Peter Warner just passed away about 2 weeks ago. Their story is just now becoming widely known. In its day, it had been a sensation in Australia, where a film crew brought the teenagers back to the island to reenact their experience. In that 20-minute film from the 60s, the friends show how they survived, and you can see that film on YouTube. But this story did not capture international news in 1965 as it might today, and remained mostly unknown until very recently, when a young Dutch historian and best-selling author, Rutger Bregman, stumbled across it on the internet. He flew across the world to meet with the castaways, or the former castaways, and made the story the cornerstone of his new book, Humankind, A Hopeful History. No surprise, it will also be a full-length movie, with Hollywood studios bidding for it. Bregman says, if tens of millions of children around the globe still have to read Lord of the Flies in school today, I think they also deserve to know about this one time in all of world history when real kids shipwrecked on a real island, because that's a very different story.
And now I'll invite us into our time of community connection, our time of sacred sharing. If you'd like to share a joy or a concern, please type it in the chat window, sending to everyone. And let us know briefly what is in your heart today. Pete will read aloud what you share. If you would like us to be able to follow up with you, please include your full name and where you live in your chat. I'll put a stone in our sacred waters on your behalf.
Dear shipmates, the wonders of spring are upon us, and as PC predicted, I see the storm is brewing and definitely ready to drop some rain on us. Brilliant sun we've had, chirping birds, green grass, budding trees and flowers, providing a landscape filled with the promise of spring. It all takes place as a backdrop for the continuing joys and sorrows of our lives, as we've heard. May we feel strength, find peace, and feel the bonds of love and community as we move into this season of promise and challenges. May it be so.
Her father went to rehab. Mother smiled. Her stepdad vanished, still that frozen smile. She had no one with whom to share her grief. A lot of stress to lay upon a child. A teacher told her that she had a gift. The teacher said the world will need your gift. The story of the gift is what she clung to. Against life's currents, turbulent and swift. She delayed in choosing a career. The story blocked her choosing a career. The gift would dictate what she does in life. For years she waited for it to appear. Believing in the gift, that got her through. Believing was the gift that got her through. But now she's grown, why does she need the gift? Perhaps it's just a story she outgrew. She says, well, everybody has their stories. We don't know what we're doing by our stories. Some parts pull us through, some hold us back. The way we tell them brings defeat or glory. Reflecting on the victories you've won, you'll find 100 stories, not just one. A story is just a tool to fit a need. You have a toolbox full from all you've done. You have a toolbox full from all you've done. And now we will extinguish the chalice. We extinguish the chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah, whoa, yeah, yeah, whoa, yeah, yeah, whoa, yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get
A reminder, our announcements about upcoming events and today's breakout rooms will follow this benediction. Go forth and tell your stories. Go forth and live your stories.